Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
Why don't you wait until July 1st to make an announcement? What a disgrace. He can rack up all these numbers in October, November, and December, but what really counts is let me see this in January.
The sports rebel without a pause, delivering fast-paced, jam-packed sports talk like no other.
Listen, I gotta call it as I see it. He is not a good player. I'm sick and tired of having to deal with the disappointment of this franchise. When does it stop? And yes, another winter that I can sleep in peace. Coming correct, direct, and in full effect. Let's get it.
This is the JAYREELZ podcast. Welcome aboard.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. Another snowstorm has hit the Northeast, but that is not going to stop yours truly from delivering what it is that I love to do. That's right, bringing you the latest and greatest of all that's happening in the world of sports, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with Joe JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as this past Thursday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And welcome aboard as those in the Northeast, I'm sure they are snowed in another foot plus, considering that 4 weeks ago yesterday, which was Championship Sunday, where we got bombarded by snow. And here it is again, just when all the snow seemed to be cleared out and the streets and sidewalks, maybe some patches here and there, but for the most part, it was all gone. Mother Nature had other ideas, thinking that coming into yesterday said, all right, now all that snow is just about cleared out. Here's more snow for you to deal with here, probably for the next, who knows, 2 months and beyond. But again, we got to worry about right now. We can't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow or, have to deal with the slush and the ice and the element. I get it. But guess what? We're now less than 2 weeks away from daylight savings time, to moving the clocks up an hour to where we have more daylight throughout the day. And number two, we're one day closer to spring, which today is what, the 23rd? So we're now, I guess, give or take 30 some odd days to go. So let's rejoice in that regard, maybe even less than that, 20 some odd. But anyway, let me stop playing weatherman. Let me stop playing Mr. Positivity, although that's what we need more in our lives as opposed to anything and everything else that seems to be happening around us, especially with this country and the world, etc. But I know you're here for some sports talk. I'll get you all your comments after my stream of consciousness when it gets to all that is happening. And there is quite a bit to talk about, despite the fact that we're in this bit of a lull. But with that being said, I have to start off with the first headline, and I understand that this is what everybody's been speaking about here over the course of the last 24 hours. And you had a very good game, borderline great game, but far from a classic, because for those, and I get it, here in this country, everybody is uniting from the sports standpoint, where we got our first gold medal since the Miracle on Ice, which I believe yesterday was the anniversary of the U.S. hockey team beating the Soviets before winning that Sunday against Finland to get the coveted gold medal. And I'll break down the game first, and I'll get to a couple other particulars. To me, from what I found to be, I don't want to go as far as saying as a negative, but certainly I'm finally in the majority when it comes to a lot of people's thought process when it comes to the game, especially when it got into overtime. But the game itself was a very good game. It was actually a great game. But was it a classic overall? Like I said, I don't think it was. I'll start off with the great part of the game. Listen, Connor Hellebuck, he's the guy that is the first star. He's the MVP by far, stood on his head. Canada peppered him with so many shots, so many opportunities, and he was able to stonewall them. Now, I understand the Cale Makar goal in the second period. That was a great shot by Makar. I get it that Hellebuck didn't come out for the angle, but Makar, he is an all-timer already, and he still has plenty of his career to go. And I'm going to get to him in a moment. But as far as the game itself, after Matt Boldy opened up the scoring 6 minutes in, and then the Canadian team certainly started to put on a lot of heat on Hellebuck, especially in that second period. They had that 5-on-3, which looked like it was going to be dicey for the Americans at that point, but they were able to throttle them, and unable to score was the Canadian team at that point. But then as you got late into the second period, that's when you had the goal by Makar, which set things up for a big third period. And again, with the Canadian team certainly putting a lot of pressure and getting after it on the USA defensive side of the ice. And that's where you saw the third period, where Hellebuck really stood on his head, whether it was stopping Devin Tays right there at the goal line, right there on the doorstep where he was able to sprawl and have it deflect off of his goal stick and off into the corner. Whether it was Macklin Celebrini going in on a breakaway where he was able to, if he had a couple more strides, who knows what that would have been, but still, give it up for Hellebuck for making a stop there. You also had the scenario where, thanks to Charlie McAvoy, where there was a scrum in front of the net where the puck went over Hellebuck and McAvoy was there to just kind of bat it down, and Brad Marchand looked like he was going to be able to pounce on it, try to put it in the back of the net, but that was cleared. You also had another scenario where Nathan McKinnon had a wide open net where he would have just slam dunked it, and obviously that would have been Hellebuck's fault, but he was able to go wide left. And all these opportunities that I can name there in that third period where even though the U.S. had a chance there, they had a power play. A matter of fact, they had a double minor high stick where Jack Hughes got clipped and Sam Bennett got put off into the penalty box. And that was with about, I guess, 6 minutes to go in the game. And you thought, oh, this is going to be the game here, because if U.S. scores, they're certainly going to put themselves in a good position to win the game. And obviously with a double minor, if they scored twice there, that would have been it. But as it was, Jack Hughes, who, of course, his name will be brought up again, where he actually clipped Bo Horvat, with a high stick there in the middle of that power play, and it was in the back end of that power play to where Canada had a brief power play, but they were unable to cash in on. And then you had a situation where the game went into overtime after the break, and now it was a 3-on-3 where it was set up. You thought right off the bat for the Canadians to win, only because, think about this, they had lined up Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and Cale Makar to start off the overtime. And you thought right then and there, those are three of the top 5 players in the sport, arguably. And quite frankly, probably 3 of the top 5 skaters. And I thought that this game was going to be over within that first shift. But as it was, give it a couple of the shifts later, where Jack Hughes off of that when Canada, McDavid came across ice, and he was a blur before it was deflected. And the next thing you know, it was a 3-on-1 going back the other way, to where Zach Werenski found Jack Hughes wide open there in the slot, and he got it through the 5-hole of Jordan Binnington into the corner of the net, and U.S. throws their gloves, sticks, and everything in the air to where the USA hockey team wins the gold medal. Now, here's the problem that I have with the way it was formatted going into that overtime. And yes, you could talk about 3-on-3, the excitement, the 3 skaters that I mentioned there for the Canadian team. Well, I understand they're not going to go 5-on-5 there, because the last thing NBC wants, and you would be shocked to even hear this considering all they want is ratings. But despite the fact that it started 8:15 here on the East Coast, and even though they did not want to have a 3-overtime, 6.5-hour game, and I understand that, but you can only imagine as the drama and suspense would have built up, let's say from one overtime to the next, and now you're in the second overtime, and there's chances after chance, save after save, and it goes into a third overtime, both of these nations would have been at the edge of their seat. Who knows what the rating would have been like if it would have gone that far. But all right, I understand they don't want the 5-on-5. How about a 4-on-4 then? Because a 3-on-3, 20-minute overtime, in my eyes, is a disaster. I mean, there's no other way to cut it, because you just knew that all the suspense, all the intrigue, all the drama was just pulled out from the wall, because you knew that this game was going to be over within the first 2 to 3 minutes of the game. Now, JAYREELZ, how could you say that knowing that it could have gone 20 minutes? Well, 3-on-3, 20 minutes is a lot different than 5 minutes, because 5 minutes, I understand there's a lot more pressure. Players want to score goals, etc. But the thing is that because you have 20 minutes in this wide period, this open period, that it just leaves even less urgency for players to go out there. So it's even more freewheeling for the skaters to go out there and do what they do best, as opposed to 5 minutes. They try to cram that all within that time frame to where, let's try to see if we can get this goal so we don't have to go into a shootout. And even though in NHL hockey, it doesn't matter. You go into overtime, they got a point as it is. So it's not as if there's this desperation for teams to try to, they want to score to get the 2 points. I understand that, but you're still going to get the 2 points regardless, especially if you win in the shootout. Where here, because it's wide open, because you have 20 minutes, it's 4-on-4 would have been a lot more conducive here. And that's why the game is not going to be a classic. And I understand people stateside are going to say, oh, yes, it is, because we haven't won a gold medal in 40 some odd years and so on and so forth. But just like the title says, to me, it just sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Because what was it? A minute 40 something. I even forgot what the time of the goal was, where Jack Hughes was the hero and will be forever remembered in Olympic history when it comes to hockey. But and listen, I live in the States. Did I have the red, white, and blue pom-poms out? I did not. But you know what? Hey, they won. All right, great. Fantastic. But to me, it just ruined the game. And a lot of people, from what I've seen, I understand people north of the border, maybe there's a little bit of sour grapes on their part, because I've read, oh, we didn't deserve to lose that game. We shouldn't have lost that game. That game was in our favor. And they weren't blaming on the refs or anything. I guess it was just a circumstance. But come on. I mean, that's just, if you ask me, that's just being a sore sport. And even if the Canadian team would have won, I wouldn't have looked at it like, oh, I would have looked at it as like, yeah, the 3-on-3 ruined it. Because again, for international rules, I get it that for whatever the reason, they decided to say, you know what, let's make it a 3-on-3, which I just thought just took maybe not all the air, took a lot of the air out of the balloon. And I've had people who are in my chat box talking about how 5-on-5 it should have been. I said, all right, no, and I have every argument to put it 5-on-5. But I understand why they didn't do that. But to me, 4-on-4 would have been fine. And I understand that there would have been some people that like the 3-on-3 because it's exciting. Some people, more traditionalists, want the 5-on-5. Me, and I'm a traditionalist, tried and true. But I would have taken the 4-on-4. That would have been perfectly fine. I would have lived with that. Because somebody I felt would have scored in that overtime. Because 5-on-5, it's literally the bounce of the puck. It's literally a line change away. And that's where the war of attrition comes in. But we get it. NBC did not want a 7-hour game, which to me would have just ratcheted up the ratings. Why not? It's not as if the game was at 3 o'clock and we got to get to the closing ceremonies. And I get it was 2 o'clock Italy time. So if it was 6 hours, it would have bled into the closing ceremonies. But so what? It's for a gold medal. And the 3-on-3 cheapened that, in my eyes. So I don't know how you guys and gals feel about that. I'm sure I'll get to the comments. I will get to the comments later on to unpack that. But that's the only thing that I look at as a drawback from this game, because this would have been a classic if it was 4-on-4 and, of course, 5-on-5. But it's not. It falls way short in my eyes. It was still a great game, and I thought the Canadians were the better team. They had a lot more chances, a lot more opportunities. I get it that with the power play by U.S. there in the third period, they certainly had a couple of chances right there in the doorstep where Binnington made stops. But when you look at that game, pretty much from start to finish, and especially in the second and third period, they outshot them 33-18. And they had a lot of quality opportunities, as I detailed about 7-8 minutes ago, especially in that third period. But listen, U.S. won fair and square. Those are the rules. You can't do anything about it. And I understand Canada can be sore, and I'm not going to rub their noses in it by any means, because, again, if U.S. would have lost like that, I would have felt the same way. And who knows? And probably would have looked like sour grapes on my part. But nah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, am I like over the moon on this gold medal win? No, I'm not. It doesn't make me any less patriotic. But again, you know how I feel about the Olympics overall. So now that it's over and done with, we can put a lid to it. And as I mentioned, even as early as Thursday's podcast, are you going to remember who won the gold or silver in snowboarding 2 weeks from now? No, you're not. Is anybody going to remember the curling controversy that we saw? Yeah, they may remember. But, who won the gold? I bet you couldn't even answer that if your life depended on it. And we understand the Olympics are niche. We understand that not everybody's going to be wrapped up in every single event or who won the gold. Now, we know Norway came away with all the glory with 31 medals. No, they got 41 medals, and I believe 18 of them were golds. And although the U.S. came on strong there at the end, obviously capped off with the men's hockey team winning, but they came in second place and Italy was in third place when it comes to overall gold medals. And I think U.S., what did they get? If I look at their tally real quick. U.S. had, I know they had 33. 12 gold, 12 silver, and 9 bronze. And then Italy up the rear with 10, 6, and 14. And Norway, 18, 12, and 11. Where Norway, their cross-country skier, now holds the record for most gold medals by a single person for a Winter Olympic. And he had 6, which Eric Heiden, if you recall, back in that 80 Olympics in Lake Placid for speed skating, had 5. But Johannes Klæbo became the first man to hold that distinction, to capture the most gold medals. And I understand it's cross-country skiing. It's not the downhill, it's not the slalom. I get that. But listen, give it up. Tremendous job by him in order for him to get that record. And I understand we can talk about the games leading up to that. I know Canada and Finland. Canada had to sweat that out. They were down 2-0 to Finland. And I understand there's old news by now. And then U.S., they killed Slovakia. They won 6-2. And Canada had to sweat those last, even the quarterfinal with Sweden, where they had to win there late, tie the game late, and then win in overtime. So, and here we are. That is it with the Olympics. That is it with the U.S. hockey team. And I understand that for those who are probably still going to celebrate here and are going to celebrate probably until the next Olympic, which is going to be in the French Alps there in 2030. So I'm sure it's going to be enough to talk about here over the next day or so, whether or not, forget about USA deserving, they deserve to win. But whether or not the 3-on-3, at least for the next Olympics, if there are going to be NHL players involved, whether or not that they should have it 3-on-3 moving forward. I think it should change it. I don't know if they will. Obviously, the IOC has all the power to do that. But if it does serve their sport right, they should do it. And I'm going to segue that to the NHL, where right now we're at a point where the NHL season's been off for almost 3 weeks, and they do resume on Wednesday. So a lot of people who I'm sure were wondering, all right, what's going to happen with the NHL? What are they going to do for an encore, considering what just transpired here, especially over this last week where you had thrilling hockey, a lot of overtimes, a lot of just great competition all around. But when we take a look at the NHL here, and you would think that over this final third of the season, because a lot of teams have played more than 54 games. You had some teams play 57. Some have played 58, including my beloved Islanders. But how I'm looking at this final third of the season, you still have a trade deadline, which is March 6th, which is a week from this coming Friday. The end of the regular season is April 16th, which is a Thursday, and then the playoffs will begin, I believe, that Saturday, which will be the same weekend of the NBA playoffs. So that is going to be one that a lot of people, that weekend, everybody's going to zero in on the quest for a Stanley Cup playoff. In this particular case, I'll get to the NBA in a little bit. But we have to wait and see a little bit after the trade deadline as to how these teams are going to shape up here. Because right now we can answer which teams are going to be in the running, which teams are going to be a part of the Stanley Cup playoffs when we take a look at the overall wild card and where we stand. And again, I can look into the crystal ball. Again, I can wait and see until we get past the deadline as to who's going to get reinforcements, who's going to be selling at the deadline, who are going to be big-time buyers. And I guess that could be a storyline there as we get to hop on board here when the Stanley Cup playoffs, especially down the road, but when the regular season picks up there on Wednesday. But what we're looking at right here, and I'll start with the Eastern Conference, we know that Tampa's had a very good first two-thirds. A little bit surprising considering that after their cup run in the early part of this decade, they've kind of tailed off here a little bit, had to scratch and claw and fight, especially over the last year and a half or so. But this year, they are tops in the conference with 78 points. You would think, based on their pedigree, that they're going to be a tough out once you get to April. Now, I know Victor Hedman has had some injuries here, so we got to wait and see. The captain, who's been there since what? 11 years? What, he was a first-round pick 2015? No, maybe before that. But anyway, he's going to be a huge component as far as their success goes here moving forward. I know you have the Canadiens who are trying to get themselves back to prominence. We all know the Canadiens are the Yankees, the Celtics of hockey with the 24 Stanley Cup championships. And you got to wonder whether or not that they're going to be a team that's going to try to bolster their roster to make a deep push to try to get themselves in position to get to a Stanley Cup, because making the playoffs in Montreal, that's nothing, or even a conference final for that matter. And remember, they made it to the Stanley Cup finals the 1 year against Tampa. That was the second cup that they won early this decade. And remember, they got into the playoffs with a measly 58 points as an 8th seed, but then they ran through the conference. And remember, it wasn't really a conference because they had it separated due to COVID, where the Canadian teams were one league and then you had the American teams as another. So that's why you had that Tampa-Montreal Cup final. But you would think that they're going to do what they can in order for them to put themselves in a position to try to get to and win the whole thing. And the same for the Red Wings, where it's good to have the original 6 teams be a part of it. Now, the sad part is that you haven't had the Blackhawks in a while, and the Rangers have dipped to the bottom of the conference. But it's good to have the Red Wings and the Canadiens to go along with the Maple Leafs, who are another team that could be on the outside looking in, and we'll get to them in a minute. And you also have the Bruins, who are in the mix there as far as the East. But it's always important to get the original 6 teams involved because they're the identity of the sport. Not many people are going to look at the Columbus Blue Jackets, or they're going to look at the San Jose Sharks, or they're going to look at other teams as the pillars of the sport. They are not, or the league for that matter. It's going to be a situation where you're going to have the teams that have pedigree. And even though they haven't won in 100 years, whether it is the Rangers, whether it is the Red Wings, whether it's some of the other sports, that's just going to be it. And if you hear my dog in the background, you're just going to have to deal with that because, yeah, I have her trapped in here. She's going to make hay. As you see me here in the second room, the wife is working on the sports desk, so that's why I'm in these confines. So, yes, she's going to have to deal with it for another 40 minutes. That's just all there is to it. So if you hear her in the background, my apologies. But with the way that the Eastern Conference is shaping up, especially in the Atlantic, you have Tampa, you have Montreal, you have Detroit, Metropolitan, you have Carolina, the Penguins. No Sidney Crosby. I didn't mention him as far as the injury that he suffered in the Olympics, and who knows what that means for the Penguins moving forward, how long he's going to be out. They're going to play the Penguins, or going to play the Devils on Thursday before coming to play the Rangers there at the Garden on Saturday. But that is sure to be a battle between the Penguins and Islanders for those 2nd and 3rd seed, which obviously they would face off against one another if the season ended today. Same for Detroit and Montreal, where the 2 seed will have the home ice. And as far as the wild card, Buffalo, that has been a big story considering they have not been in the playoffs in a decade and a half. They currently have a 1-point advantage over the Bruins for the 2 wild card spots. And the Bruins, as you know, they're going to be fighting it out with the Blue Jackets and the Capitals and the Senators and Leafs. Now, the Leafs are another team that, who knows, this could be Craig Berube's last stand. It could be a situation where the Leafs could be looking for another coach. And we understand they jettisoned Sheldon Keefe, their longtime coach, a couple of years ago to bring in Berube, which I thought was a very good hire. But Berube, last year, I understand, and win a series against Ottawa before losing to Florida in the second round. And this year, they have not found their way. I get it that they've had a little bit of a transition. Mitch Marner going to Vegas, trying to shake up the team a little bit. And what that's done, not a lot of improvement. And the Leafs are going to be a story here on whether or not they're going to qualify for the postseason, if they can make a run. But who knows if they're going to make any deadline deals to fortify their team to make sure that they could try to get into the postseason. And at that point, we all know it could be a coin toss. And then you have the Panthers. Panthers have started to make their way up a little bit. Right now, they're currently 8 points behind the Bruins for the final spot there for the wild card. And we all know, back-to-back cup wins, 3 straight times to a cup final. And I said this at the beginning of the year, I didn't think they were going to get back to a cup final, let alone win it. So, and that wasn't going out on a limb. And this is after they won the cup there when they beat Edmonton last June for the 2nd straight year. So, unless there's going to be some magic there down in Sunrise to where they're going to go on a run, get into the postseason and be that team that nobody wants to play, obviously we'll have a couple of months to chew on that, but I don't see the Panthers clicking. All right, they may click to get into a postseason. They may have their run, but I don't see them getting to a point where they're going to three-peat here. Now, they could get on a run, and then who knows? I think they'll somehow, some way, I could see them finding a way, but I wouldn't be shocked if they don't. because their record is what their record is for a reason. And I understand they've had injuries going back to Alexander Barkov, and they just got Matthew Tkachuk back there last month. But I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't click. And when you've gone to 3 straight Stanley Cups on the cusp of going to 4, just ask the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's why they've kind of petered out here over the last couple of years. The same could be said for the Panthers as they regroup and see what they could do to try to get a march into the playoffs. And out west, similar to the NBA, where the Western Conference, you have a lot of power teams there. And when we talked about the NBA the other day, you have the OKCs, the Denvers, the San Antonios, and you want to throw in the Lakers. You can if you wish, Houston. Well, I think the Western Conference with Colorado, with Minnesota, who's played phenomenally here, with Dallas, they both came into the break with big winning streaks. People are going to talk about Vegas. Edmonton, you can't knock them out considering the star power that they had despite 2 Stanley Cup runs here over the last 2 years. But the West with Colorado, who Minnesota only is 5 points behind them. And remember, they had a double-digit point total deficit probably as early as maybe 3 weeks prior, to the Olympic break. And Dallas was just 1 point behind them. So you know they're going to be gunning for Colorado to try to see if they can get that top spot so they can have home ice. But as we all know, the last thing any team wants to have is the President's Trophy, because look at what happened last year with Winnipeg. And years before that with the Bruins when they had the best record in the sport. So I understand you got to proceed with caution with that, but you know that those 2 teams are going to want to get an opportunity to have home ice throughout the playoffs, where Colorado right now has that distinction. And then you have Vegas out in the Pacific. They have the 1 seed. Edmonton, 4 points behind Vegas, with Seattle just a point behind Edmonton. And Seattle's had a very big year. And you got to give it up to them after a down year last year. And they've tried to do what they can to see if they can put themselves in a good position here. Then you have Utah, the Mammoth, and then the Ducks, who the Ducks had a very good middle of the season, and now they're starting to fall off just a little bit. But just because they're at, 60 points, 63 points, and the Kings are 3 points behind them, doesn't mean that a lot can't happen to where they can move up in the standings. Because remind you, they may have 63 points, but they are 5 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights. So if they go on a run and those teams slip up, before you know it, they could be in first place. And they were in first place, in the latter part of December. So just because they're on the outside looking in at this present moment, or really they're right at the cusp there, I should say. They do have the second wild card. Just because they're there doesn't mean that they can't be a 3 seed or 2 seed or even get the 1 seed as far as the Pacific Division goes. So that's what's a little bit more hotly contested. Where in the East, although you do have those teams that are there, Columbus 4 points behind, same with the Caps, Ottawa, who made the playoffs last year. Do we expect those teams to continue? Now, Columbus is going in with a 7-game winning streak, but you kind of wonder, does this break hurt them or does it help them? And with the going back to the West, I'd like to see San Jose make a run with those young guns. And we talked about Macklin Celebrini having that big Olympic tournament, and they've done some big-time things. Now, I understand they've hit the skids here a little bit going into the break, but between Will Smith, they had a very young team that are looking to try to do things and maybe arrive a little bit early there in the Western Conference. And that's what you want to see. You want to see the young guns. You want to see their stars. I would love to see Macklin Celebrini get in there maybe as the second wild card team. Why not? I understand Anaheim, they've been a team that's not had a lot of success here over the last God knows how many years. And they had that good mix of veterans and young players. But I would love to see San Jose and the former number 1 overall get an opportunity to get into the postseason and get some experience and get a taste of what playoff hockey is like. And then after that, there is a significant drop-off. You have the Blackhawks, who are 5 points behind the San Jose Sharks, and people would love to see Connor Bedard there in that spotlight. But with them being 10 points behind Anaheim, you can't really look at them right now unless all of a sudden maybe they buy some players at the deadline and they make a push. But the NHL is going to be very fascinating down this stretch here. And obviously with the trade deadline, I'll be on top of that. We'll monitor which players are going to go where. We know the Rangers may be a team that's going to have a lot of players for sale. It could be JT Miller. It could be Vincent Trocheck. I mean, who knows? Igor Shesterkin could be on the block. And if I'm the Edmonton Oilers, I understand you got to give up a fortune, but I would call Chris Drury to say, what can we do to pluck that guy? Because you want to have Connor McDavid, who signed that 2-year extension, you want to have him in that uniform for the remainder of his career. And if you bring in Shesterkin, obviously that's going to be a enormous upgrade for the Oilers in order for them to finally win that Stanley Cup that's eluded them the last 2 years. And I just use them as the example, considering, listen, no offense to Edmonton. And remember, they made a trade earlier this year. They brought in the former Penguin goalie Tristan Jarry. But is he the guy that's going to answer the bell and take you on a 4-series journey and then cap it off with a Stanley Cup at the end when it's all said and done? And I get it. Igor Shesterkin hasn't won any Stanley Cups in his own right. And it's gone to conference finals in the past. I get it. But if you ask me, would I rather have Tristan Jarry or Igor Shesterkin? I'm taking Shesterkin. So that's just a thought from yours truly. But as we move it along here, I'll be on top of what is going to transpire. The NHL now will probably get lost in the clouds a little bit, maybe not leading up to the trade deadline. But when we have March Madness come in and the tournament, and I know that's going to be bananas, and everybody's going to be with brackets and with the madness and watching games starting from 3 Tuesdays from tomorrow. And then the tournament in full bloom there that Thursday, Friday with the 16 games. And you're just going to be up to and past your eyeballs in college basketball. So we will certainly keep an eye and monitor what's going to happen here as the season will reconvene and resume there on Wednesday night. Let me see. Anything else happening in NHL as far as news and notes? I just want to pull that up before I turn on to other things. No, that's about it. Yeah, and the other thing I forgot to mention, the Johnny Gaudreau, his kids were in attendance, and that was a great scene as the U.S. wins the gold medal, and they had the Gaudreau jersey, who would have been a part of that team. And we all know the tragedy that happened last summer, terrible tragedy with the Gaudreau brothers. And having their kids there obviously was another just emotional moment for the family and everybody to be involved with the U.S. hockey team winning the gold. All right, now let me turn my attention as I lace up my high tops and get to the association, because with the NBA back in full swing after their All-Star break, and I know the Knicks had some rough going there, it seemed, for about a game and a half, because they got pasted by the Pistons, and they're going to be part of the discussion here when it comes to the NBA, but they got pasted by the Pistons there without Jalen Duren, who had a big game there in his return last night, where I believe he got, 26 and 13. And for the Pistons to take care of the Knicks the way they did, certainly not a good sign for the Knickerbockers. And then you had the Houston Rockets come to town there on Saturday night, ABC Saturday Showcase. And for them to have an 18-point deficit in the fourth quarter, you're thinking, wait a minute, are the Knicks still on this All-Star break? I mean, what's happening? And then they turned it around. They certainly had a blitzkrieg of a final 9 minutes of the game to where they won by a bucket. Of course, Jalen Brunson making big shots there down the stretch. And for them, that was a big win, because then they won in Chicago last night, where the Knicks get back on the beam after what looked like it was going to be a rough start to their final third of the season. So the Knicks, at least for right now, they can exhale, and their fan base, as they won a big-time game against a very good opponent there on Saturday and then beat the Bulls there yesterday in Chicago. But the Pistons are going to be the story here over the course of the next couple of weeks, because when you look at their schedule, and we'll just look at it from the early part but extend it further, do you know that 5 of the next 6 games are against San Antonio, Cleveland, and Oklahoma City? With San Antonio tonight in their building, and then they play Oklahoma City on Wednesday. So you can have a preview, 2 previews of possibly an NBA Finals. Tonight in Detroit, which I believe the game's on Peacock, and then a game Wednesday, which I could be on ESPN. Let me just double check. Yeah, it is on ESPN, Oklahoma City at Detroit. So 2 big opponents there, and then they play Cleveland twice after that, sandwiched in with Orlando, and then San Antonio again at San Antonio. So you want to talk about a litmus test for the top seed in the Eastern Conference? Well, it's going to be right in front of them here, not only over the course of the next 48 hours plus, but over the course of this next 2-week stretch. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to play up against one another. And Cleveland is going to be a home and home. I don't believe it is home and home exactly. I know they're part of this stretch here. We know about San Antonio and OKC. After that, I think it's at Cleveland as I pull it up. No, they're home to Cleveland Friday, then Sunday at Orlando, then at Cleveland and at San Antonio. So between now and over the next 10 days, 6 of those games, 2 against San Antonio, 2 against Cleveland, and the 1 game against OKC. And they do face off against OKC in Oklahoma City on March 30th. So keep that in mind, Piston fans, as you got a bit of a gauntlet forthcoming here to see how that's going to fare for the team from the Motor City. Then last night you had Lakers Celtics, and the Celtics off to a good start to their final third, winning in Golden State. No sweat there, as you had no Steph Curry, obviously no Jimmy Butler. They did face off against their former teammate Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, but they did quick work with the Warriors, and the same could be said last night against the Lakers. Peyton Pritchard, 30 points and 13 shot attempts. Big-time game there. Jaylen Brown, who got LeBron's endorsement for MVP after the game, if you saw that. And Jaylen Brown continues to put up big numbers as the Celtics pulled away from the Lakers there late and win, 111-89. So good start for them. They go to Phoenix tomorrow and then Denver on Wednesday before coming home to play Brooklyn and then Philly over the weekend. So that's what you have with the Celtics. But the rest of the NBA, any other games of note over the weekend, as I pull those up, off the top of my head, I don't think there really was anything else. Talked about Jalen Duren's return. Yeah, nothing else to really get into. I know Denver scored 157 points in regulation, I might add, as they beat the Trailblazers there on Friday. I mean, to think, 157. They beat them by 54. I mean, geez. And that was in Portland. It wasn't even a home game. And then you had Phoenix beating Orlando, where Phoenix not only lose Dylan Brooks to a broken left hand out indefinitely, but they also lose Devin Booker to a hip strain. So the Suns, who are obviously in that muddled mess of a 7 through 10 seed and on the cusp of the 6, so losing 2 key players there for an extended period of time, that we'll have to wait and see. And let me see, yesterday, anything else come out of yesterday? I know Oklahoma City beat Cleveland. You had the triple header there of primetime game. Well, not primetime, but of over-the-air games. Golden State beating Denver in the afternoon game on ABC. You had OKC win, and then, of course, the Celtics beating the Lakers. But besides that, that's what you have with the association. As far as the schedule here, tonight you know about San Antonio, Detroit, Sacramento, Memphis, Utah, Houston. Big whoop there. Tomorrow, and the games of note. OKC at Toronto, not a bad game. Knicks in Cleveland. Good game there. We'll go through the standings in a minute. That's on Peacock. Minnesota at Portland's also on Peacock to wrap up the streaming coverage. Then you have Charlotte at Chicago. Golden State, New Orleans. Boston at Phoenix, as you know. Nah, not really much there. And then your Wednesday slate, San Antonio, Toronto, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Boston at Denver. As you know, that's the nightcap ESPN. And the first game, Oklahoma City, Detroit, as you know. Yeah, that'll pretty much do it for your schedule early on. And, of course, we'll talk about Thursday and the weekend forthcoming there on Thursday's podcast. I believe that's it with the NBA news and notes. Let me just double check. NBA, I believe that's it. Yeah, nothing else to discuss. Oh, and DeAndre Hunter, let's throw this in the mix. he is out for the remainder of the year. Now, remember, he got traded by way of, I believe he was part of a three-team trade, got traded to Sacramento, and he's done for the year, as well as Domantas Sabonis, and Zach LaVine. They have the worst record in the sport. They've lost 16 consecutive games, so you already know the tanking has begun there in Sacramento, but of course they'll never admit that, as you know. But that's what I have with the NBA. To stay with the hoops, let's go through the college real quick, as we'll see what's happening there on the hardwood. Let's pull that up here to get the graphic. You had a very interesting Saturday night and a rare one where I believe for the first time since I think it was almost to the day last year, where you had two of the top, or I should say the top four teams play against one another. And they all played Saturday night. You had Michigan and Duke. Really was in D.C., part of this, what was it, the Capital Classic or whatever it was, Capital Clash, which was weird. I know that's a game that should be in November, December, as opposed to January, in this case, late February, because you're thinking about conference play. You're not thinking about Michigan Duke in late February. But a good game. Cameron Boozer, 18 points. I know that Duke pretty much was in control of the game. Michigan, I know they tried to get a last-ditch effort there, but falling short. Now, you would think that Michigan will probably fall back a slot or two. And with Arizona winning in Houston, and that was a big game because Houston, remember, they were the 2 seed going in. Houston fell all the way to 4 with their 2 losses a couple of weeks back when they lost to Kansas and Texas Tech. So you would think that with this shift, this battle royale, finding it out where you had Michigan, Houston, Duke, and Arizona, maybe you'll have a scenario where it's Arizona, Duke as your 1 and 2. Michigan will probably fall to 3, Houston to 4. And could those be your top 4 teams going into the tournament? Right now, it's probably going to look that way. And that's all everybody wants to know. Who are going to be those 1 seeds when it's all said and done? And who knows? You got to see what's going to happen here down the stretch of the season. You got a couple of weeks before you get to the conference tournaments, which will be a week from today, which will lead you into Selection Sunday, which is 3 weeks from yesterday. But Houston, as we all know, with Kelvin Sampson, that's a team that's always going to be a defensive-minded team. They're always going to put the pressure on you. Yes, they do have some offensive capabilities, but we know that their identity is defense. And I know Kelvin Sampson, that elusive championship Final Four, what was it, a Final Four, what was it, in 23, I believe it was, and had fallen short. But what we got to look at here is how the committee is going to not only have the 1 seeds, but where these teams that are on the bubble. And we'll focus in on more of that as we get into March. And obviously the teams that are going to be on the cusp, whether out or in. So I'm looking forward to it. I know everybody's looking forward to brackets. Everybody's getting amped up now that the college basketball right now is starting to get in full gear. And you had those 4 games there on Saturday, or 2 games there, the 4 matchups there on Saturday, which certainly will whet anybody's appetite for college hoops. And yeah, let's see how this all plays out here, where we would think the position jockeying, as I mentioned, you're going to have the 2 losers there, Michigan and Houston, go down a peg, where Arizona and Duke will move up. You could argue maybe Duke could be number 1, considering that they beat the number 1 team in the nation, but I'm sure Arizona is going to say, well, hey, we were the 4 seed, and they'll probably move up to 2, and then Duke will be the 1. That's how I look at it. And I probably was a little bit premature to think Arizona is going to be the number 1. But that will probably be announced, I guess, maybe later today or probably by tomorrow. If it hasn't been announced already, let me take a look at that while we're at it. Probably not. I think it's a little bit too early to tell where their rankings are. No, it is what it is. That hasn't changed as of right this very moment. So, therefore, we would think Duke may catapult themselves to number 1, Arizona 2, Michigan 3, Houston 4. And then you have, UConn, Iowa State, who actually lost to BYU, and AJ Dibansu had a big game. He had 29, 10, and 9. where BYU had a tremendous performance there, and he had, I mean, listen, almost had a triple-double. So Iowa State's going to take a few pegs back. Then you have Purdue, Kansas. Yeah, I think your number ones, maybe UConn, depending on if they finish strong. And I would think if Duke, Houston, and even Arizona, if they hiccup here, maybe they could take a step back and UConn could slide in. Well, you're probably looking at those top four teams, maybe the top four when it's all said and done. And your one seed right now, you could argue whether or not that's Michigan. Right now, people are going to say Duke should be the number one overall right now, considering they just beat the number one team. But again, all this will be ironed out here in the weeks to come. And, of course, I'll be all over it as we get into the month of March and the madness will begin and conference tournaments and the brackets, et cetera. So we certainly have plenty of time to unpack that. All right, now let me turn my attention. Let me see what I got here. Because after that, after the Olympics, after the NHL, college basketball, baseball, exhibition season's begun, but, I mean, really, what am I going to discuss? What, the Yankees hit 1,000,000 home runs and scored 20 runs against the Tigers? Or even the Mets with 4 home runs yesterday beating the Yankees? I'm not going to get crazy about that. I mean, it's preseason. It's exhibition. And even though that game was in Tampa, it wasn't in Port St. Lucie. But right now, I can't get wrapped up in the exhibition. I know you're going to have the WBC forthcoming, and I believe that's going to start. If it doesn't start a week from tomorrow, when is the WCB? Let's see. I think it starts March the 3rd. When does? Yeah, and the WBC, what is it? It's really about a week and a half. It's not that long. The WBC, I think it's the 3rd to the 13th, right? No, it's the 5th to the 17th. Yeah, so it ends on St. Patty's. So it starts a week from this coming Thursday. So you still have time. I can't even, and I'm not going to break down the WBC rosters and who are the favorites, whatever. We know Japan, they have the defending title, winning the last one, as you know, the big strikeout there, Shohei Ohtani to Mike Trout. But baseball right now, it's just laying in the weeds. Not really to unpack. Now, I know you had a terrible passing on Friday with Bill Mazeroski, the Pirate legend. He of the walk-off homer in the 60 World Series against the New York Yankees, Game 7. Dies at the age of 89. Don't know what the cause of death was at the very moment, but Mazeroski, who got voted into the Hall by the Veterans Committee, and we all know that home run, I get it. It was 3-4 generations ago, but it is a very distinct home run considering that it won a World Series. It was a Game 7. The Pirates were not huge, not enormous, a massive underdog in that series. Go look back at the box scores of the series. The 3 games that the Yankees won, they destroyed the Pirates. Destroyed them. Like 12-2 and 9-0. And, I mean, games like that. To where Mazeroski at the old Forbes Field hit the game winner over the left field wall as the Pirates won the World Series. But for Mazeroski, we all know he will forever be a Pirate legend. Obviously, his name will be remembered in baseball history, not only just winning that World Series, but a walk-off winner. Yes, I understand Joe Carter did it in the 93, but that was Game 6. This is for all the marbles. And if that happened today, that would be not only one of the iconic home runs in the history of the sport, but it'll be talked about forever. And yes, I get it, Miguel Rojas and even Will Smith in the extra innings, but it wasn't a walk-off because remember, they were the road team. So you got to keep that in mind. But thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to the Mazeroski family, the Pirates, Major League Baseball for his passing. And I know you had an NFL passing too, Rondale Moore. Terrible story there. The former draft pick by the Arizona Cardinals, second-round pick, 2021 draft. Wide receiver, did not play last year, although it was in the Viking camp. I believe he tore his knee returning a punt and founded self-inflicted gunshot wound. Just can't make it up. Just terrible story there. Thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to the Moore family, of course. And, I mean, who knows if CTE was involved. You know, with the NFL, especially when it comes to self-inflicted gunshot wounds, who knows how he took his life. And you got to wonder whether or not, if he did not take his life through his temple, maybe his brain could be donated to find out what stage of CTE did he have. And the NFL can't sweep it under the rug. I mean, they could talk about all they want. Oh, it's terrible. It's this, it's that. And of course, they don't want to confront the problem. They just want to sweep it under the rug. And it's a shame because despite the fact that Dave Duerson and Junior Seau, and we can go through countless others, this is going to continue to happen, unfortunately. Now, you can't predict it. You can't forecast it. But you think it's the last guy? And wasn't there another player just recently? Oh, the kid from Dallas. Think of his name off the top of my head. What's his name? Marshawn Nealand, I believe his name. Something along those lines. Yeah. Kid took his own life, 24 years old. In season. Terrible. Defensive player. So, sad to bring up that story, but I mean, that's, unfortunately, it seems to be par for the course sometimes when it comes to players in the NFL taking their own lives. So, but that's what I got, people. Nothing else to really unpack or get into when it comes to sports. It's that slow period, that little dead zone that I've talked about, and it's probably going to stay that way for a little bit, even though the NHL is coming back, and obviously the NBA is up and running again, and baseball, whatever trickles in news-wise, but college basketball, will be front and center, and anything that's going to happen in the NFL, a report or whatever else that's percolating in the sports world, that yours truly has got you covered. All right, let's get to your comments here. Quick, I'll get to the top. I see my guy Brent in the house. Morning to you, my man. You get no empathy for me over snow? Yeah, absolutely. Without question. Just had to bring it up because we've had over a foot of snow here, but you're right. And by any means, I had not complained at all. And if you want, not only just you, Brent, but anybody else, I got to make sure that it's public. I went outside, did a little jaunt in the snow with my early post-game or pre-game podcast live, or podcast pre-game live. I'll get it together, people. My apologies. What we got here? There's a lot of pushback over the FBI KP celebration. I didn't hear about that. I hope you're still with us, Brent, because FBI. You got to fill me in on that. Yes, we know about Dylan Brooks there, Val. No pun intended, bad break. It was Canada's game to win. No, Canada, they were the better team. I mean, they were. Free Kanye back up. I got to back up a little further. Oh, I guess I was on top of the camera. I know I'm late to that. Thank you, Free Kanye. I know, maybe I should check out these comments as we go, but not post them up. But yeah, that's the thing. Because of my setup here, yeah, I'm not trying to just like zero in on the side screen that I have here, and I just try to focus in on what I got going on the laptop and try to keep my eye contact with you guys and gals. So Free Kanye, I appreciate it. Thank you, my man. It was a shot on the ice pass. Yeah, there was one angle that looked like it was 5 holes, so that's why I had it replay in my mind. But yeah, it got past his left skate. They had that one low shot where it looked like it was a 5 hole. But no, you're right, Brent. No, obviously, J-Rod, absolutely. No, that's true, Brent. Any team does have a shot. No, I know, but why 4-on-4 same? Well, 4-on-4, you have an extra guy in the ice. So there's a little bit less real estate. I mean, that's how I look at it. And remember, it's 20 minutes. So that's an eternity. But right. And I get it. As I explained before, the reason why I didn't do the 5-on-5. Lauri Markkanen, illness. Utah, tanking. Keontae George. Saw that on X. Yes, Fishing Angel. Let's see. Sorry, J-Rod. Saying hello here. Yes, absolutely. Fishing Angel, 100%. Cabin fever. Over. Yeah, I hear that. That's why I had to get outside. I can't let this day get the best of me. Besides the dang snow. How many inches of snow you guys got? Curious. Let's see what else we got here. All right, Jay. Anyone on the team that had the most Olympic hockey players? Florida. Yeah, I don't know what they had. You mean most players on one team? Is that right? Florida. All right. It's closer to a quarter season than a third. Well, you figure if 54 games is the 2/3 point, I understand teams that play 57, 58. So you're closer to 60. I get that. But you do have a couple of teams there, Brent, that, let me see, that are at or obviously past the 2/3 part. It's taking forever here. Yeah, you got a lot of 57s in there. 59. I thought one team at 54. San Jose 55. Colorado 55. Tampa 55. Yeah, so I mean, listen, we're splitting hairs here. So 2/3, almost a quarter left of the season. Let's see. I like the updates here by, well, we don't want that. Val. Oh, Bio in the house. Greetings. I know. I feel you, Bio. I know it must have been a rough watch last night, but you know me. I'm not going to, no way. Never been one to rub it in or whatever. Unless it's the Yankees, I guess. And even then, you know me. I'll wait until October for that to happen. Still February 2019. That is true. Who would have thought the Blues had it in them? Holden Sock. Welcome. Oh, is he changing his number? I wonder why. Interesting. How about Pritchard? Yeah, Pritchard was, listen, big game last night. 30 points. Thank you, Val. The LeBron tie. Not yet. Not yet. Yes, Johnny Hockey. I know. But that was nice to see, though. Yeah, I saw that with Scottie Pippen and Myron Gardner. Yeah, that was not pretty. I understand Gardner. That was a game, for those who missed, Saturday night between Miami and Memphis, where Gardner, I think Pippen took a shot, and then Gardner just literally pushed him in the back. And then as the play went up the court, Pippen approached Gardner, and he just shoved him. And that led to a scrum. Damn, he finished need a cane. Oh, a wheelchair. Yeah. No, he's still going strong. 35K to Scotty. Did he get 35? Toppers. Teams have no control of their schedules. Oh, I know that, but I got to bring it up. Fodder for sports talk. I was in tears watching that, though. Very much appreciate. Yeah, absolutely. That was great. Not a fan of D. Brooks. Yeah, no, listen, I'm not a big Dylan Brooks fan either. But that's going to be a loss for the Suns. That's going to be one where, listen, Phoenix had a good year. Got to give it up. I didn't think so, but hey, UCLA. But Phoenix, they're going to need whomever that's carried them this far. They're going to need them the rest of the way. Oh, nice bio. I didn't see that. And, Illinois, listen, they have a big year too. What are they, 16th in the nation? Somewhere around there? Where's Illinois? For grins and giggles. Illinois. Well, they'll probably go to 16. They're actually 10th. So I was off by 6 slots, but they may not go to 16th, but they'll obviously slip down in the rankings here as you move it along. Yes. First guy limit 84. Yeah, absolutely. Now that's going to be crazy. I'm sure you could Airbnb or rent a room if you have, because that's going to be chaos there in 2 years. Michigan can clinch a share of Big Ten tomorrow night. Oh, nice. Oh, did they really? I didn't see that. Oh. Tough loss. Duke, Michigan. Yeah, I could see that. J-Rod, absolutely. Hope Sacramento keeps number 18. That's that Brady doesn't still get a chip. Yeah, I mean, listen, Sacramento, we know that they're hoping to get the ping pong balls their way. But I'm jealous to support both winning summer games. I agree with you there, Brent, 100%. 74 and sunny today in SoCal. Can you send some of that this way, Bio, please? Oh, did you? Yeah, I did. I didn't see it. I saw you send it by the time I got in, undressed, and set up here. But I'll definitely check that out, Jay. Yeah, well, please. Yeah, I know. Why was he celebrating? I mean, come on. Ray, I do remember. Welcome back. That 4-4. Yo, the 98. Yeah, I remember the shootouts of those times. And in 94 in Lillehammer, that was wasn't that the Paul Correa, Hendrik Lundqvist save? And I believe Sweden won. I'm with you, Ray. I don't know if you're still here, Ray. Yeah, exactly. That was a big-time photo op. I didn't like that either. All right, toppers. Please answer. I'm a big fan. Ray, I don't know if you see on the bottom, if you're still with me, but if you notice the scroll, it says, I'll answer follow-up after the podcast, so stay tuned. So I don't know if you read that. Bio. No personal vehicles? Oh, that makes sense. 100%. Sharks was called. Oh, yes. San Jose. Exactly, J-Rod, yes. What was that, 12:25? Hey, Ryan, you still here? What's up, my man? I believe you're from India, if I'm not mistaken. Was it India? Hold on. I think it was. Sharks was called. Yeah, let's see. I'm curious to see how they're going to do here in this final stretch here of the season. But, yeah, that's it, people. Unless there's something else you want to chime in on, please feel free. Now's your time to do that. I'm just checking to see what we got here. KD eyes at 28 games. Bemoans U.S. Hoops critics. Okay. Brooks out 4 to 6 weeks with that broken hand. Vaughn says surgery saved her leg from amputation. Wow. What else? Yeah, I'm going on ESPN. Stephen A. not confident Jaylen Brown could get Celtics past Pistons. Was it funny to see Stephen A. talk of hockey with PK Subban? I know that thing popped up. I mean, geez. And I get it. Just like if I'm going to talk soccer or if I'm going to talk about certain sports that obviously aren't in my wheelhouse, and even though we could get an idea and grasp it, and even though he admits that he doesn't know anything about hockey, but I don't know. I just have a problem with that. I'm sure you watched the game, but he couldn't tell you what team Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon plays on or Cale Makar if he had a USA program in front of him. I'm not trying to knock him, but I mean, come on. Let's go like we see it. Could he tell you? Oh, maybe he could tell you now who Macklin Celebrini is, or Connor Bedard, or Matthew Schaefer, or even Dylan Larkin for you, Fishing Angel and J-Rod, or Alex the Brincat. Yeah, I mean, come on. Who are we kidding here? Who are we teasing? All right, what is this here? Oh, this would be music to J-Rod's ears. The challenge this one rider sees and the Lions training for Myles Garrett. Now, but that'd be a lot because you got to take on his money and et cetera. believe that is it. Hey, Ray. You see, Ray? You just got to be patient with me. That's all. You just got to be patient. All right, let me get ready to wrap this up. Artie Moreno is amazing. What did he do? I'm curious, Bio. You heard it here first. Yes, Ray. I appreciate you stopping by. All right, Brent. Thank you for having me. Thank you for hopping on board. Yes. Please subscribe, share. We will be in touch. Oh, here we go. What up, Reed? Ken Griffey or Mike Trout? Oh, I'm Ken Griffey. Yeah, to me, and listen, that's not a knock on Trout. And Griffey did have his ailments later in his career, especially in Cincinnati. But yeah, Griffey, without question. All right, so any last comments? Post them because I will get ready to sign off. Yes, Reed, I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate the question as well. That'll do it for another podcast, people. As always, thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the Detroit Department of Life Coach Sports. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe, like, leave a comment here on the channel at JAYREELZ on YouTube. Also, Apple and Spotify, the JAYREELZ podcast. Throw me a few stars, write a review. I sincerely appreciate it just to increase the visibility of this podcast, of this channel, with all the others that are out there. The little engine that could is still moving. Wednesday's live stream, we'll start talking about Sunday and the anniversary live stream. We'll unpack that. Unpack a few other things along the way. Another podcast that we got coming Thursday. A lot cooking here on the channel. You want to stay locked in, you want to stay dialed in. I know my regulars, my diehards, my Reels rockers, they know the drill. They already know, and I appreciate them all, as you well know. But for those who are watching for the first time, listening for the first time, let's go. Let's get cracking. This is independent sports talk. This is true, passionate sports talk without the clickbait, without the rage bait. You're not going to get any of that from yours truly. I can promise you that. So hit that subscribe button. I would sincerely appreciate it. If you want to hit me up with any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can do so at the following. On Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ podcast, or JAYREELZ, strictly JAYREELZ on Instagram as well. Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just a number. Twitch, JAYREELZ1, just a number. And the old-fashioned way, the JAYREELZ podcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood, it's in the DNA, talking sports since birth. With my rockers, with my diehards. And doesn't matter. You can be a casual sports fan, good sports fan, diehard, or kook like yours truly. It's all good, because you know, as long as I'm sitting in front of this microphone and camera, I promise I'll deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury, my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. My lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are. The JAYREELZ podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ podcast, on the flip, baby. And with that, I thought I answered you, Ryan. What did you say? Later, toppers. I appreciate you. Reed. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I do remember you. Ray. Of course. I got you. I will do so, Fishing Angel, without question. Val, as always, Bio, have a great sports day, everyone. And to answer you, Rayon, I answered. What is happening? What is going on? What is good? Until next time, everybody, on the flip.